So in the last two videos, we've already discussed about how if a muscle isn't engaged properly or if it's underactive, it can cause another muscle to step in and overwork. That overworking can cause that muscle to become really tight. So an example of this is because we sit down for such a long time, our hip flexors tend to become shortened. In doing so, that then pulls on the hamstrings, causing the hamstrings to become longer and for the hamstrings to actually do a lot of the work that the hip flexors should be doing. We've also discussed how tightness in a muscle doesn't necessarily mean that that muscle is the area that we need to focus on. Sometimes when we come into discomfort into a muscle, we automatically think that the muscle's contracted, so therefore it's that muscle in particular that's tight. However, when it comes to the hamstrings, if it's overworking, overcompensating for a distant muscle area, that could be because instability in the knee or the hip flexors. So what we need to do is we need to address these muscles that are underactive, need to get them fired up again to then relieve any tension or any imbalance that it's causing in the rest of the body. Now, one really simple way to do this in the hips is to come into our lunge step out. So just start with your feet hip width apart, lift the spine nice and tall, make sure that you've got a soft engagement in the core, so you're not coming into that anterior tilt. All you're going to do is step one leg out in front, reach the opposite arm up and over. Press yourself back and then switch sides. Now, it's not necessarily about going as fast as you can from one side to the other, and we're not really looking for perfect balance either. What we're trying to do is make sure you're squeezing the glutes so we're getting that hip into flexion. And I want you to try and play around with the movement a little bit. Maybe see what it's like if you straighten that back leg. Maybe if you bend the back leg a bit more. Maybe see if you really stretch the arm up and start dropping the opposite shoulder down towards the ground, how that feels in the hip. The whole time I want you to really think about squeezing those glutes for dear life. An advancement on the movement that we've just done is our split lunges. So you can either use a bench or you can use a chair. And you're just going to take one foot and you're going to place it on top of that chair or bench. Now you might need to step that back and the front foot forward. What you're going to do, squeeze those glutes, slowly drop down. Now you can either hang here, just make sure you're trying to tuck the tailbone under, squeeze the glutes, and you'll feel this, the hip flexors having to activate and work to hold you here. And you can just do dips, nice and slowly, control the movement, work on the glutes. And when we work the glutes, when we're working the hip flexors, it just allows us to really get release in the area that we're trying to work on. So when a muscle isn't engaged or firing up the way it should do, it will mean another muscle will step in to do that work. A classic example of a pose of where you can see if your hamstrings are overworking is bridge pose. So often I'll see people when they come up into their bridge, they're really having to massage. They're using their hands to squeeze the hamstrings because the hamstrings are working in order to come into that hip flexion. But that hip flexion, the hinging from the hips, should all be from the hips and the glutes. So one way that you can work these areas without the hamstrings feeling like they need to take over is to come into your bridge, but with your frog legs. So you're going to bring the soles of your feet together, knees go out wide, so it's like a cobbler pose. And what this will do is your legs, hips are in exterior rotation, and it just means that with that and the knees bent, it's going to be really hard for your hamstrings to overwork. Now, one thing that I do want to say, if you suffer from piriformis, this may not be the right exercise for you to do. So if you have that issue, maybe give it a go, but if it's a severe piriformis that you have, definitely leave this one out. Everything else is exactly the same as your normal bridge. Arms are alongside you. You're going to press the feet into the ground, lift the hips up. You might not be able to come up as high. That's fine, but keep squeezing the glutes and you'll feel that engagement in the hips straight away. So maybe come up into a normal bridge and then try it in this frog leg position and just notice the different muscles that are having to fire up. Also, if you are one of those people that when you come into your bridge pose and it's all the hamstrings that you're feeling it in and you can't feel it anywhere else, definitely try this version instead. What you're doing is you're rewiring the brain, letting it know what muscles need to do the work so the hamstrings constantly don't feel like they need to overperform. So give those exercises a go and let me know how you get on.